2022 was a disaster in many aspects.
Last year is a year that we'd all like to forget.
I think we felt the impact of the drought last year from top to bottom.
It was really tough to come out here and see the fields and to just witness all the dry landscape.
When I spoke to growers and as the water allocation announcements came out, people got frustrated with the process because it had never happened here where we had that much water cut.
I mean, everybody faced cutbacks. We employed far less people than we had in years prior.
I had to let 12 or 13 guys go just because I didn't have the work for them, plus I didn't have the money to pay them.
We were operating basically at 40% of what 100% capacity could be.
If the people, they're not working enough hours, they don't come over here and spend the money.
We probably had about 25% of our households not employed as quickly as they normally do.
We did 7,000 acres out of 42,000 that we could have done with a 75% supply of water. We're an aerial application business, and we've been in business here since 1983. I've been flying on this airport since 1976. This is where I started.
We're in charge of all of the pesticide use enforcement throughout the county. We enforce all of the codes in the Food and Ag Code, California Code of Regulations, and the Business and Profession Code.
Grow West is a local, independent, family-owned ag business. We have a safety and compliance division, engineering, as well as a research and development team, and we also provide wholesale fertilizer in terminals in Northern California.
Jones Flying Service, it started out as Bronner and Jones. My dad went partners with a farmer out here, and we bought him out in, I believe it was '68. Then it became a family business, which it still sort of is. I got my sister and my brother a part of it. We were employed about 30 full-time people. Right now we're down quite a bit because we had to lay people off because of the drought.
We've been here since 2007. Most of my stuff that we have in the store, it's work items. Safety items, work boots, hats, belts.
Not having the availability of rice really impacted a lot of them because I know of a lot of farms. They actually rely on the migrant employees, but when they can't offer that, then the employees seek employment elsewhere. It impacts us in so many different ways.
To have a normal season is positive outlooking because it's not just me here at Farm Air. I mean, we got 6 different families that are making a living here. And they depend on this too, and we're kind of like a small family. So I would not like to see any of those people go anywhere else. I mean, we've been going at it for quite some time.
When it comes to rice, rice is the largest commodity here in Colusa County. In a normal year, when we're not affected by the drought, we farm a little more than 150,000 acres of rice.
Many people think that rice comes straight from the field, but there's so many other partners that get that rice from the field to the shelf at the grocery stores. So you do have the farmer and their staff. You have your crop input specialist. Transportation is a huge way, not only getting it from the farm to the rice dryer, but also to the shelves of that grocery store.
Rice in this area is huge. When we don't farm or we don't fly, we don't buy, and we can't help people that supply us. We don't need anything. I mean, it's just one of those trickle-down effects.
Right here. Last year was rough because a lot of farmers, they got a lot of jobs. For sure, we get hurt. And it's just not me or us over here, it's everybody around.
The rice industry is very much connected to the aerial application business. Our business is 95% rice. So when rice doesn't have any water, we take a big hit. You know, we've still got all of our fixed expenses, insurance, annual inspections, workers' comp, you name it, we have to pay every year, regardless of how much work we do. With the little amount of work that we did last year, just barely met the expenses. This is what it's about, growing a crop, and it provides jobs for the people in the local communities.
Rice is incredibly complementary to the refuge habitat, and the amount of the landscape that is flooded in typical rice production is so pivotal to a multitude of waterbird species.
The biggest threat from waterfowl to a drought is the crowding on limited amount of habitat. So when we were looking at maybe a few 10,000 acres of wetlands, a few 10,000 acres of winter flooded rice, the risk to those birds all crowding together in hot, stagnant water can really drive up the risk of cholera, botulism, and of course this year, avian influenza was a big threat.
If you don't have rice, but you just have wetland habitats, then you don't have that opportunity for the birds to use both habitat types. The whole system kind of breaks apart, and the birds just can't utilize even the remaining areas that are still there to the same degree that they would in a normal year.
Rice fields provide habitat for over 250 species of fish and wildlife, endangered species in fact. How can we leverage the multiple benefits that our landscapes provide by keeping rice on the landscape and interacting those fields with rivers and wetlands, and to provide a complete ecosystem approach to conservation? And we can do that by having working lands be the backbone of that.
Birds have been here for eons. It's part of the fabric of life on the planet. In the case of these birds in particular on the Pacific Flyway, they've been moving from the northern hemisphere to the southern and back on a yearly basis. And that's an inherently just amazingly complex phenomenon. For that to be something that exists and that we continue to support and allow, it's just a magical thing, because it's much of what kind of nature represents, right? In this wondrous array of connectivity and place and different species. If we can continue to support these migratory populations, then I feel like it gives us more hope as humans, you know?
People are really starting to feel the effects of not having a 2022 crop. The 2022 crop was harvested, what little it was, and it only took a few months to process. Anything that's being processed through mills right now is stuff from storage. Is it a make or break year? Yes, when you're looking at it for your hopes and your forecast and in the future, but we still have a rough road to travel until we get to that next harvest, because we're still living on the harvest that never was.
I'm hoping that if we get full water, price of rice stays good, and be able to keep my guys on year round to get back to what we call normal. It takes a lot to keep all this going.
I think there's a lot more hope this year than there was last year. And you look at the income that they made in the past year versus the income that they made last year, because I got it this year, it's so much less. One of the most common questions last year was, if I don't get a job, how am I going to pay the rent? Or do we have to leave the camp? This year it's like, it rained, we're going to have a job. You know, there's hope.
We're very, very hopeful that this year will produce at least a 75% year. By all signs that we're seeing, as far as the snowpack and the levels in the reservoirs, we think that we might have about a 75% year, which would be great for us.
This year, it'd be a lot better. It's going to be a beautiful season. Because I've been talking to farmers, and farmers, now they start work on the farm.
We come out of this drought and rice is normal. It's not just going to improve my life, but it's going to improve the seed companies, the fertilizer companies, the families that work there. I think we'll feel that everywhere.
Well, one of the things that we're doing this year to take advantage of the drought is to try to understand better what this means for the birds and how they respond to these conditions that we have. So in collaboration with our partners at Point Blue and Audubon, we're working to capture shorebirds, to assess their body condition, and to put radio transmitters on them. We're looking at their movements through the valley, and we're going to be comparing that between years like this and more normal years. And so what we learn from that study will give us some understanding of how well they can deal with this type of a situation, and that can help us understand just how we allocate resources in conservation. So it's really critical.
It is more than just one season, right? If we start seeing the droughts, they impact multiple years. It's not a one and done. We're not out of this thing. We didn't solve the problem necessarily. This is something we may see in the future. So going into this year, yes, we may have more optimal farming. That doesn't mean that we're gonna be guaranteed that for the following year or the year after that or the year after that. However, I think we are a resilient industry. I think we are a smart industry, and I think we will persevere.